1 Peter chapter 3. Now let us read from verses 8 to 12. 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 to 12. Reading. Finally, be ye all of one mind, having compassion one of another. Love as brethren. Be pitiful, be courteous, not rendering evil for evil, or railing for railing, but contrariwise, blessing, knowing that ye are thereunto called, that ye should inherit a blessing. For he that will love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil, and let his lips that they speak no guile. Let him eschew evil and do good. Let him seek peace and ensue it. For the eyes of the Lord are over the righteous, and his ears are open unto their prayers. But the face of the Lord is against them that do evil. May God bless the reading of his word. Let us turn to God in prayer. Our gracious, loving Heavenly Father, we thank you for this night, that we can return to thy house with this freedom to worship you in person and to study your word together. Lord, we come seeking cleansing, washing thoroughly in the blood of our Savior, acknowledging, O God, that we need thy cleansing, for we are so full of sin. We commit sin without even, Lord, being aware of some of the sins. So be merciful. And Lord, we also pray that you would now open our hearts, our eyes of understanding, Lord, to desire to live 2022 in the light of your word, and to live lives that would really reflect our stranger and pilgrim's status on earth. Lord, we pray that your Holy Spirit would be the teacher in thy house tonight. Help the Youth 180 upstairs. May the facilitators be used of you. And Lord, use my lips, Lord, to help us understand your word and not just to understand it. Lord, may your Holy Spirit, Lord, move us to desire to deal with the things that you speak to us concerning 2021 that we have failed you in and how we ought to move forward. So Lord, be in our midst. We ask and pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Have you all taken a piece of the question sheet? If you have not, please do get a copy. It is at the back of the room. Please get a copy of it. Now, last time when I was with you all, I did not finish one question, all right? And someone was asking, and I realized, yes, I missed one question. Now, look at verse 7. I want to cover that before we move to tonight's area. It has implication on tonight as well, right? Look at verse 7. Now, to the husband, God says, likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge. Dwell with your wives according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Right? I asked a question. Now, what happens when the husband fails in his obeying of God's commandment? In verse 7, to dwell with them according to knowledge means to be aware of his duties as a husband, as commanded by God. He must follow those duties, which we've covered briefly in Ephesians chapter 5. Giving honor to the wife means ensuring that she is not treated disparagingly, but treated as precious. Honorable means giving her the honor that is due to her. And as unto weaker vessel, physically she's weaker, right? She has areas of weaknesses. And how do we not be impatient with them, but help them, all right? And remembering that they are heirs together with the grace of life means they are also precious in God's sight. Just because God says for her to submit to you doesn't mean she's inferior, all right? She is there to help you. That is why God put that in place. Now, and then if you fail, God says now, verse 7, God says now you must do all this. That means so that your prayers be not hindered. Now, in this direct context, Husbands, do you realize that your prayers will not be heard by God, or rather He would ignore your prayers? Your prayers will be hindered if you fail in being the godly Christian husband you ought to be. Now this is very serious. You pray, Lord, help me in my work. God says, you are not dealing with what I've told you. You ought to deal with in your home. Regarding yourself, how you treat your wife, how you fail your wife. God, please take care of my children. God says, your prayers are hindered. You pray, Lord, please help me. I am in trouble. I have a health problem. I have a financial problem. God says, until you deal with your failure as a Christian husband, your prayers are hindered. There is a barrier. You must know that. Now, for the Christian husband, you must study the Word of God and really make sure that you are dwelling with your wife according to knowledge, fulfilling her responsibilities. You are honoring her, treating her not with impatience, with disdain, not caring, not providing for her as you ought to. Now, when you fail in all this, it affects your spiritual fellowship with God. Prayer is your time of fellowship with God. Every time you go before Him, as long as you know that you have not been the husband you ought to be. Now you need to ask for forgiveness, first and foremost. Get up from your knees, go to your wife, and apologize to her. Confess of your failure. Wife, I'm sorry, I've not been the husband I ought to be in leading you with the knowledge of God. Wife, I'm sorry, I've not been giving you honor. I treat you very badly. I speak very badly to you. I'm impatient. I lose my temper at you. I act like I'm the king of the house with no care or love for you. Apologize. Apologize. God says, when you go to Him in prayer, you know that there is sin, leave your sacrifice there and go and get right with your brethren. Now, if you know that there is something between you and your wife, deal with it. Speak with her. Humble yourself. Now, that is God's way of telling you how important to Him your wife is, how important marriage, the right marriage is to Him. That is how important it is. There are few things that God says your prayers are hindered. One, obviously, He already said, if you regard iniquity in your heart, I will not hear your prayers. Well, this is your iniquity. Right, husband, in 2022, I really plead with you, urge you, deal with it. Your failures to lead the family, your failures to love your wife as you ought to, care for her, how you treat her, is crucial. It's crucial to your spiritual walk. You know, there are some husbands who think that as long as I bring the salary home, I give my family a very good life. Look, my children go to good schools. We go to restaurants. We go on holidays. That is all that is important. I've emphasized that again and again. That's how the world thinks. But God's idea of your responsibilities are very different. It is spiritual, first and foremost. I'm not saying that you don't take care of those things, but it is first and foremost spiritual, right? So this is serious. A bad relationship at home hinders both prayers as well, right? So wife, don't just think that, well, this affects my husband. If you are insubmissive, well, there is also iniquity, right? If you are not responding as you should to his authority, especially when in things of obedience to God, then your prayer are also hindered. It's iniquity in your heart. All right, so that was the answer to that question. Now, let's begin now as Peter moves into another section. All right, another section. Now, in order to understand this section well, we must answer question number 1 first, all right? Question number 1. Question number 1, now restate the areas of submission we are commanded to observe as I missed out 2, are commanded to observe as strangers and pilgrims on earth. Now, please look at chapter 2, verse 11. Chapter 2, verse 11. Now, this whole section, right? This whole section begins in verse 11 in chapter 2. Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims. Hence, this whole series that have been on up to now is called Strangers and Pilgrims. Then strangers and pilgrims. In specific, we have been studying about submission. All right? Peter says, as strangers and pilgrims on earth. This world is not our home. We are just passing through. We have a destination. We have a purpose on earth. We do not make this world our dwelling place and root ourselves here. Our heart is somewhere else. We are just sojourners, all right, passing through. Now, he says, with that, he covered submission. The first thing he covered is about submission. That must be very prominent in our life as strangers and pilgrims. Right? Submission means submitting yourself, coming under authority and obeying the authority. All right? You want to try Ashoka? Right? I hope you remember. We use the acronym Ashoka, what it means. So that is the submission under authority to the commands and to the admonition of someone that God puts in authority in your life. They command you, they admonish you, they tell you, you must obey. So that is how God wants us to live on earth. Now, then in question 1a, what is this submission, or who is this submission to, right? So we must remember so that we can continue. Now, so can anyone remember verses 11 to 17? Or rather 13 to 17, all right? 13 to 17. Submission to whom? Alex. All right, authorities, for example, laws and governments. All right, so yes, all right, to authorities, specifically government and their laws. So it's very clear here. All right. Now, so verse 13, to king, to governors, to punish evildoers means their laws. Okay. Now then, so to government authorities, 18 to 25. Thomas, do you remember? To whom? Don't remember? Wow. Okay. John Sehumbing. To pastors. You're saying pastor. Say again? To church pastors. Oh, masters. Yeah, it's not here yet, all right? It's in another place. All right, church masters. Very good. All right, it's not church masters. Masters, all right? Who's your master? Bosses, all right? So you got to remember, so you always remember, I must submit to government, then I must submit to masters, right? To governments. All right, to government. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm distracted by a particular thought. To your in your workplace, in the business, all right, to your company, to your superiors in your company. Okay, so there must be something that is clear in your heart. And then chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. Chapter 3, verses 1 to 8 is clearly in marriage, all right, in the place of marriage. In the place of marriage, the wife to submit to the husband, and the husband to submit to who? The husband to submit to who? Howard. To God, all right? To God's commandment on how you ought to dwell with your wife. Okay, so it's all about submission. In other words, the attitude of the strangers and pilgrim on earth in area of living in society, in the workplace, and in the home is guided by this one characteristic: submissiveness to authority. Now, if you are someone who tend to be very quarrelsome, picky on authority, and like to go against the flow, right? Just to be different or just to create trouble. You must change. It is the behavior of the flesh. Now look at verse 11, chapter 2, verse 11. Abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul. Now after that he dealt with submission. That is one of the problems of the flesh. The old man, we don't like to submit. That is why we struggle with God's commandments. All right? So first and foremost, Peter deals with this issue, submission. Now, then in question number 2. Now, after dealing with all this, then he says in verse 8, chapter 3, verse 8, finally, all right? What does finally draw our attention to? What do you think? What does finally draw our attention to? Now, if you look at it, if you read the whole passage, which we have done, so you just read now, finally, towards one another, and then he describes behaviors, not rendering evil for evil, between believers, how you ought to be. Between unbelievers, to you and everyone, actually, believers and unbelievers, from verse 9 to verses 12. Now, not rendering evil for evil, not railing for railing, but blessing, and so on and so on. And eschew evil, do good, seek peace, and sue it, and all that. Now he says, finally, then he describes all this behavior. What do you think he is trying to draw our attention to? Now, how we should begin to read this is, all these behaviors that he is describing now is to be applied to all areas of life. And now, especially in the case of under government, under businesses, in the marriage, and towards God and towards each other. Now, he said, now this kind of behavior is your guidelines on how you to behave. So, for example, not rendering evil for evil, railing for railing. Now, he's saying that when it comes to the government, don't render evil for evil, railing for railing. In the place of your work, towards your colleagues, towards your bosses, towards your company, don't render evil for evil, railing for railing. In the home, towards one another, likewise. Towards Christians, likewise. All right, so now he's saying, these are some of the things you and I must be using in our lives, in all these situations. So he said, finally, I want to summarize some behaviors to you. So, now the submission to God is the whole idea. Because who told you and I to submit to government? Who told you and I to submit to our bosses at work? Now, please, all this submission, and who told you to submit to your husband? Who told you to treat your wife in a certain way? All this, we say submit when it's not sinful. Of course, God will never ask you to do something sinful. All right, so please don't misunderstand me, all right? So we've clarified that. Now, he's saying, who told you to have this submissive spirit? God. So he says, finally, all this behavior are commanded by God. So please, take it with that understanding. It's not Peter telling you to be like that. It is from God. Now, but in question number 2, why does it say finally also? Now, there is something that he says now at the end. Now, look at verse 10. Look at verse 10. For he that will love life and see good days. He that will love life and see good days. He said, finally, if anyone want to have a peaceful life, a good life on earth, a life that has blessings, a life that is filled with good days. Now, who do not want that? Who doesn't love life? Now, I say, if you love life, then live in this way. He said, finally, if you love life, have a submissive spirit. An insubmissive spirit does not give you good life. a good life. So he said, finally, I need to tell you this. Maybe anticipating that something that, oh, such a life is terrible. In fact, one student asked, when I say, well, girls, if you want to marry someone, you must be ready to submit to this person. And I said, do you struggle with that? And one girl asked, she said, yeah, I struggle with that because if you do so, they will take advantage of you. Your life will be miserable. You must fight back. You must be strong for yourself. You must speak up and you must assert your position, your place in life. If not, well, she didn't say all these things, but basically she's trying to say, if you don't do that, if women don't do that, you will have a miserable life. But here, Peter is saying, now finally, I need you to know, and in fact, verses 10 to 12, he is quoting Old Testament. All right? He is quoting the Old Testament, Psalm 34. All right? You don't have to turn there. He's saying from the old days, from the time of the Old Testament saints till now, this life, the submissive life is what brings peace. What brings a good life, not the opposite. All right, so why does he say family? Now, to set our perspective in place now. Because after all these weeks of learning about submission, I don't know how you feel. You may feel, oh, this is a very oppressed life. I'm oppressed on earth. Now, these Christians, they were going through one of the most severe persecutions in Christendom history. Right? We introduced that in the beginning. Under the Emperor Nero. Right? So they lived at that time. The most severe persecution. And for them to hear, submit to the king. Them to hear, submit to masters. Some of them were slaves still. All right? And then at that time, women were oppressed in society. Now also. And said, to do all that, this doesn't sound right. So Peter tells them, no, finally, I need you to know this. I'm quoting you Old Testament text to tell you this is true. This is true. Hence the title tonight is Strangers and Pilgrims. Submission is the best life. Right? Submission is the best life. Though our flesh tells us otherwise. Do you trust God? But he says finally. Now question number 3. So he says, now with that, now, then let us start. Now, question number 3, God says, now, in verse 8, finally, be ye all of one mind. Be ye all of one mind. What is one mind? Be ye all of one mind. In fact, when you read verse 8, one mind, having compassion, love as brethren, be pitiful. Isn't this what we've been covering in prayer meeting and in the Sunday messages? All right, so it's a recap. It's a recap. So I'm not going to go through the details. Be of one mind, but at least I hope that you remember. Because God says, be of one mind. Submissiveness begins with be of one mind. But then what is one mind? This is revision time. Peter says, I want to put you in remembrance, right? In our watch night service, Peter said, remembrance is very important. You don't remember, how are you going to lead your Christian life on earth? So, when we studied on Sunday, be ye of one mind. What is one mind? Anyone remember? Okay, everyone looking very nervous now. Let me try. Okay, Wei Chen is pointing to himself. Why are you pointing to yourself? All right, Wei Chen, what is one mind? Welcome to Regen. So it's your first question. They are asked at Regen in the first question of the year. Okay, good try. All united. There's a specific meaning. You see, when you don't pay attention and don't try to remember the meaning of words in the Bible, you cannot live your Christian life. Okay, last one, try. I asked Howard already. Ada. We studied in Philippians, right? One mind. Right? Where's everybody's mind when I was teaching one mind? All right, from now onwards, remember. I said one mind is about living in harmony. All right? So please remember. You say now, God tells me to submit to this idea. The idea in life is living in harmony. Living in harmony. Church without one-mindedness, will not have harmony, will have disunity instead. Now, so God says, have a harmonious spirit. Be a person that desire to live at peace with others and just to go along with others and not cause problems. If this causes disharmony, I'm very ready to be of one mind with you. I will give up my own mind. Now, this is again not about sin, all right? Please understand that. Now, and look at the question 3. So it means living in have a harmonious spirit. Now, then I ask, why is being of one mind important to submission? Why is it important? God says, begin this, have a harmonious spirit. At work, with the government, and in the home, have a harmonious spirit. Why is being of one mind important to this idea of submission? Why do you think so? Why do you think so? Vincent? Oh, no, ask Brenda. Welcome, Brenda. So you get the second question. Brenda, yes. Why do you think having a harmonious attitude, a desire to be living in harmony is important for building submission in oneself? It's common sense, right? Common sense, but you still must answer yes. It's hard to be submissive without wanting to be harmonious, right? That's exactly the point. But of course, some may disagree, right? It's very easy. You submit to me, and you be harmonious with me, all right? Then there's always harmony, all right? Now, the whole idea is this. Now, if they are in authority, if they are authorities, if you don't have a desire to actually be to live in harmony with them, you will not submit. But here is referring, for example, to brethren. Be all of one mind. Means between people of the same level. Now maybe you say, well, to authorities, well, anyway, I better live in harmony with them. But that doesn't mean that you are a submissive person. Because you submit because you're afraid of punishment. Right? All these are authorities over you, right? That's all. You're afraid of punishment. But now the test is this. With those are of the same level, God says, now, unless you have a mind that is always ready to harmonize with someone else, it don't need to be always your way, your idea, your concepts, and your organization. God says, learn. As long as it's not sinful, don't always be the one it must be my mind that gets executed. Understand that. Now, even as a pastor, there are areas that I'm very clear. I'm authority and I cannot let you decide. I have to be responsible. But in certain areas, once we have committees, certain areas I would just say, they say, Pastor, this or that, then they can't decide and say, choose one and it's up to you. All right? Areas that I don't need to be watching over and those don't have impact on spiritual directions and all that. I also have to learn as an authority. Be harmonious. Right? You say, right, they print something for me in pink color. I say, actually, I don't like pink. I like green. Everything must be green. Live in harmony. All right? Those are inconsequential things. Now, without such a spirit, you will be a problem at the workplace. You will be a problem in the country. You will be a problem in the home. You will be a problem in the church. You will be a problem to your own health. You have no peace. All right, so it is, when you say I want to be submissive, have this mind. Begin there. Now, question number 4. Well, actually, at this point, maybe I should say some things. Now, there are Christians, there are anti-vaccination people. Some for very wrong reasons, all right? They simply say, well, I'm against it. Not even for any health reason or anything. There may be some valid reasons why they should not be vaccinated, But many just simply say this, and they're Christians. They simply say that we must have our rights. No one should tell us what to do. They would not want to be in harmony. I have my own choices. You should not decide for me. You should not make my choice for me. I make my own choices. And some will say, it's not that they think that it's a problem with the vested nation. They are just against the concept that I do not have a choice, that I must listen to you, government. They say, no, this is wrong. We must not. And some even say that it is unchristian. It is unchristian to be like that. But God says, be of one mind. Submit to the government. It is not sinful. It is for the good of everyone. Don't be like that. All right. So that is one example which I think we've covered before. Now then, look at question number 4. So God says, now have that attitude. Have a harmonious attitude. You go to work. Step into work with a mind that is, I want to achieve harmony at work today. I'm not saying you give up your place as a manager, right? You understand what I'm saying. You go to school. I want to live in harmony with the school and its laws. Same at home. Do you have a quarrelsome home? Siblings at home. Are you quarrelsome? I know all of you are mainly adults. It can be quarrelsome among grown-ups as well. Is your home like that? The problem is one of the mind. All right? And God says, as Christians, strangers and pilgrims, I do not want you to live like that. Now, if you do not have a harmonious home between husband and wife, between siblings, 2022 is the year to make sure. You say, Lord, this is something I got to change. Because he says, begin with finally be all of one mind. Now he says, having compassion of one another, love as brethren, be pitiful, be courteous, and so on. All right, so we quickly go through some of this. I've covered them in significant details. If you miss them, go to our prayer meeting messages. We covered all this in significant details and with a lot of examples. All right, but a quick recap at least. I must have a mind that desires to be in harmony, always living in harmony with others, means ready to put aside my preferences, my desire. That is my heart. Now, the next one is this. Having compassion. Okay, actually this I can test you, because this compassion is a different word. The compassion we learn is deep in the emotions, in the heart, deep in the gut, all right, that kind of feeling towards others, of compassion. Now, this compassion actually is the word where we get the English word sympathy. Sympathy. All right? So God says, now live in sympathy towards others. And they say, Lord, I must learn to be like that as a stranger and pilgrim in the various places you put me in. What is sympathy? Now, what is sympathy? Now, it means having a common understanding, a common feeling with others. So you feel, I sympathize, right? I sympathize means you like put yourself in the person's shoes, all right? And try to understand what the person is feeling, all right? And in fact, when I check the dictionary, it's interesting. They say sympathy is agree with a sentiment, opinion, or ideology. Agree with a sentiment, agree with an opinion, agree with an ideology. All right? So someone brings something up. Try to sympathize with why the person bring it up, why the person is suggesting that. Don't keep making your needs first. All right? Sympathize with an opinion. Understand the difficulty that the government is in now. Understand that. All right? We are not saying that they are perfect. But that is what Christians are called to do. Understand the difficulty that your company faces when they make certain decisions. Understand the difficulty that church faces when they need to make certain decisions. So now is to live in sympathy with it. Now, very often, authorities, they have to make decisions that are difficult, that cannot please everyone. It is difficult. Sometimes in church, there are some decisions we have to make that we can't fully tell you the whole background because it may involve some people's personal life. then we say we will have to do this, all right? We will do our best to explain as much as possible, but some things it's difficult. It's same at home, right? For fathers, for parents. Sometimes you understand, there are some things you have to decide on, and it's difficult, and you can't tell your children the reason, all right? They may not understand, or they may be fearful, or what, but you have to make a decision. And you give an opinion or something. So you understand how it is as a parent at home. You understand how it is as a boss at work. So God says, now be such a person. When you go to work, be such a person. The whole world reacts differently from you. They are the anti-authority people. They see bosses as their enemies, always. You see bosses, you see government, you see your husband as someone who has to make difficult decisions, who are in difficult situations. I will try and support them instead. Now, I'm not asking you to curry favor, and people say, this person always currying favor. Right? Don't do it because of that, hoping to get a promotion. But it is that kind of attitude. Are you such a person? God says, when they see your good works. Now, please turn back to chapter 2. Turn back chapter 2. All right, chapter 2. Now he says, having your conversation honest among Gentiles. Honest means it is consistent with the word of God. All right? It is righteous, right? Then say, they may by your good works, when they behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. So God says, now, I want to explain to you, finally, wherever situation you are, have that kind of mindset and mentality. All right? Of course, here is definitely among believers, all right, because the context is love as brethren. In church, with Christian friends. Now, then, next one. All right? What is brotherly? Love as brethren. This is Philadelphia. All right? Love as brethren. Okay, how to remember love as brethren? All right? I feel like Peter now. I need to put. Therefore, I will not be negligent to put you always in remembrance of these things. All right? All right. Brotherly kindness. The acronym, Benedict. A brotherly kindness. Someone who exercises brotherly kindness. Do you remember the acronym? How to remember? How can I really know that I'm exercising brotherly kindness? Okay. Phyllis. Very good. Cares. All right. I will start praying how to help you remember. To help you to remember. But you must do your part, all right? Cares. Someone who exercises brotherly kindness cares. But now the question is, what does cares stand for? Okay, still try. Benedict, maybe you just remember that, but it didn't occur to you. What does C stand for? Say again? Can't hear you. Sorry, I can't hear you. Considerate. Never came up at all. All right? Okay, last one. Frank. Charity? No, charity has a different one. Okay, last one. Benjamin, please help me sleep tonight. I'll be very, very sad and feel like I totally failed God in the whole year last year. Compassion. Thank you for having compassion on me. All right? Compassionate. All right? Compassionate. C begins with compassionate. It is something that's deep down in you. That is how it's a genuine care. It is not a fake one. You say a few things. Oh, how you are. Oh, so sad. Oh, so pitiful. I pray for you. That's all. No, it is a genuine, compassionate concern that drives you to do things. What is A? Quickly, A. Claude. I almost call you fraud. Claude. Right? Don't. Awareness, very good, all right, but I call it attentiveness, all right, awareness, all right, Claude is always the exemplary, his notes are fantastic, all right, awareness. So you say, how to exercise brotherly kindness if I don't remember? But the question is, what is about awareness? Brotherly kindness is because you're so deeply, genuinely concerned, you actually are very observant, very aware, very attentive to others around you, your brethren. All right, this is something that we all need a lot of. Now God says that is how you behave very differently from the rest of the world. Now, he is saying this, all right? Finally, among Christians, behave like that. Because I haven't even covered with unbelievers. But among Christians, you behave like that. Because that is how strangers and pilgrims reflect that they are really from the same kampong, all right? The same country. They live like that. They are really strangers and pilgrims that love one another. We need a lot of that. Now, I'm always very touched by many of you. You're very observant. You're very careful, and you notice something that I seem to lack or I'm struggling with, and you're concerned and you do something for me. I'm very touched by that. That is how we all ought to be towards one another. Because look at verse chapter 2. Now, verse 10, he said, in the times past you were not a people, but now a people. Then verse 11, you are strangers and pilgrims. He said, you are really a kind of people that is so unique in this world, that in verse 12, when the Gentiles see how you live, they are amazed. Can you submit to that? Can you submit to that? God says, live like that. You see, we are not willing to submit to that, because we have too much of I, too much of me. I'm more concerned about me, I'm more interested in me, and I'm not going to give way to others. At home, it's the same. With my sibling, it's the same. With my wife, my husband, it's the same. At the workplace, yes, it's the same. I definitely want to be the number one. I don't care if people die, as long as I'm number one. Right? But God said, can you submit to this way of living so that the world will really see you as truly strangers and pilgrims that are of my people, that I am your God and you reflect my behavior? Are you willing to live like that and put aside the kind of character you and I are in 2021 and change? The next one, right? Oh wait, R. What is R? R is responsible. You love responsibly, all right? We are not teaching that your Christian brethren is lazy, don't want to work, this job is too hard, I don't want to take difficult job, so I just keep living on government handouts and keep asking people for money. Now that is not love, all right? So responsibly, we saw many Bible verses that warn, do not make your Christian brother sin by loving them irresponsibly. Now if they're lazy, they don't do their homework, and they say, hey, let me copy your homework. That's irresponsible love. All right, so responsibility, E is, what does E stand for? I asked Claude. You forgot. Oh, Claude is a fraud then. I thought you were so good. All right, Claude, I'm teasing you. Say again? Encouraging, very good. All right, wow, you restored your title, all right? Encouraging. God says, can you submit to this? Be an encouraging person. All right? Someone who cares, someone who really go out of the way to lift up someone. Not, I'm too tired, I'm too busy, I have my own problems, I have no time. How many people can I help? But God says, brotherly kindness is really going the extra mile to encourage, to be an encouragement to others. All right? And S stands for sustain. This is not just short term. It's sustain. Sustain helping. Sustain care. It's not new person come very exciting, want to look nice, then you be nice to me. Now God says be a genuinely caring person that sustains in our brotherly kindness. Now God says be all this. Then be pitiful. Now what is pitiful? Now pitiful, different from sympathy. Pitiful, you try to understand and then try to be harmonious with the person, understand the person's position and be harmonious, all right? At home, in church, at work. Now, what is pitiful? Now, this one has to do with the compassion. Deeply inside of you, in your innermost being, actually feel the sorrow that the person feels. All right, like you see a beggar on the street, suffering. All right? You not only want to give, to help. In your heart, you really feel. But the biggest feeling you must have is of their soul. All right? So don't get me wrong. We are not saying that Christians should keep going around and keep giving money to beggars. All right? Some of them, they use it to go and take drugs and all that. but there is a genuine, deep feeling when your brethren is undergoing something. Now God says, among you, finally, can you please behave like that so that the world will see that you are different? But then, now he moves to, I missed out. Be courteous. Be courteous. You are believers. You are Christian. You are in a Christian family. Now, young ones, there are some young ones here, very young ones. Are you a Christian? Yes. Are you living in a Christian family? Yes. God said, be courteous. Be courteous to your brothers and sisters. Very basic thing. What is courteous? Be polite. Are you polite at home? Oi, don't get me some water. Oi, don't do this. Yeah, you stupid. Right? Is it like that? Or is it, instead of good morning, darling, is good morning, old man? Maybe old man is a tender term in your family, I don't know. Right? Politeness. Now God says politeness is something that differentiates you from the world. Now when we study the signs of the end times, the behaviors of the end times people, one of the things, people will be fierce. People will be boastful. They won't be polite. Politeness is something, courtesy is something that is going to be very lacking. And can you submit to this? Instead of being like the world, they are like that. I have to make sure I'm very aggressive. When I go and when I queue up for food, I make sure I look very fierce. I'm very aggressive so that no one cuts queue and so that, they will treat me nicely. God says, no, be a courteous person, regardless of how the world behaves. So, young ones, if you are not someone that have been polite at home, it is time to start. God says, will you submit and be such a person? Such that husband and wives, are you polite to one another? They say familiarity beats contempt, right? When you first got married, very polite, very nice. No, before you got married, very polite, very kind, very gentle, very respectful. So courteous is politeness, is consideration. Just now someone said being considerate. Being considerate, being respectful. All these things during courtship, you're like that. Then after marriage, all this courtesy that you extend to your wife is gone. Or to your husband is gone. We are old husband, old wife, right? There's a saying, old husband, old wife, married for so long. But God says, no, just be polite in the home. Be polite to your masters at work. Now, greeting is a sign of politeness. That is why we keep teaching parents to teach your children. Build that in them, because in the end days, their friends, their school, the people around them are not courteous people. Let them have that characteristic, all right? Teach them to greet. Teach them to be respectful. It is very important. This is a defining characteristic of Christians. So God says, now be like that. I'm still very sad. I do not know what to do, and I've been praying, and I hope parents, you pray too. What I'm trying to explain is this. An outward expression of lack of courtesy is an inward sign of a problem in the child, even for the adult. Please know that. Please know that. Do you know that the only people that greet me in church, not that I want to be greeted, all right, are the elderlies. It's amazing. The elderlies always greet me. Not the young people, not the children. It is a sign that there is a problem. They are elderlies. Why? Because they are from a generation who understands. And they have a characteristic in them of politeness. Politeness is a virtue. They have that. You and I must be aware. That's why I am very careful to make sure I always greet the elderlies. I always greet you. Why? Because it is a training of ourselves. It is a sign of submission. It is a sign that I can be humble to someone, to greet the person. Children do not like to greet because they feel that, why should I greet? I'm equal. If I greet means I am lower. You see, there's this thought in them. So God says, now be polite. So do you greet one another in the morning? I still do that. Sharon still does that, right? We still wish each other when we see each other. When I reach home, we still do the same. These are little things that God says that differentiates you from the world. Now you go to school. Young ones, they don't greet the teachers. You greet. Be courteous. Now, I'm not asking you to be an apple polisher, all right? We studied that, right? Young ones, some of you are here. It's pride. Pride means you keep following the teacher, greeting the teacher, but because it's apple polishing. Is that the word? I don't know. It's basically trying curry favor, all right? Not talking about that. When you go to work, do you greet your bosses? All right? Have that. Then people say, it's different. You know, these Christians, when I walk in, they have a respect for authority. They're different from the rest. Now, the worst nowadays, children call their parents by name, by their first name. It's strange. It's a sign of the end times. That's all I want to say up to this point. All right? Now, very quickly. So be like that. Are you like that with one another? When your friends see you with each other as Christians, how do you treat each other in church? You walk past each other like no one exists. It is very shameful. Now God says this kind of behavior is when the people walk into the church, they see by your good works, they will glorify God. This walk into church is different. People really greet each other. It's not like the world where people are just walking past with stone cold face. They don't care about each other, or worse. They say, even at my workplace, people seem to look at each other and smile and greet more than in church. All right? So, please, parents, I ask you to do that. Now, I'm tempted to say they don't greet me. It's okay. I don't care. But I cannot say that. I must care. Teach them to greet the elderlies. Teach them to greet auntie, uncles. Teach them politeness is an expectation of God, not the church, of God. When they come and they say, this is a different environment altogether. Imagine an elderly visitor who come for seniors fellowship, and then some of your children are here. They are strangers, but they go up and greet them. They'll say, wow, if only my grandchildren were like Christians. Do you understand? The point here is God is saying, be strangers and pilgrims that exhibit the behaviors of your God. You imagine God in His Word. You often see God greeting His people. God actually greets His people. Peace be unto you. Now, next, I have no time. We have to move quickly. Now, question number 8. Now, why does God command us to behave in this way towards unbelievers? Now, look at verse 9. This way, sorry, it's not very clear. Verse 9. Not rendering evil for evil or railing for railing, but contrariwise, blessing. Why? God says, now, what is railing? Railing means they are very insulting to you. They are very aggressive in their speech to you. They slander you. They use words that are very strong against you. All right, that is railing. Okay, you stupid, you idiot, you useless, or that kind of thing. All right, so it's strong words against you. Now, God says when they do that, and when they do that, now don't render railing back to them. Do not speak in this way back to them. The Christian should never be a railer. All right? The Christian should never be someone who is, in his speech, impolite. Not just impolite, but aggressive. Aggressively trying to put down other people. Now, today it's not just speech, right? Young people, it is, even adult, it is the social media. Social media. In other words, bullying words, all right? Now, so railing, sorry, I missed out evil. What is evil? Now, evil means mistreatment. Actions that cause you hurt or loss. Mistreatment. Okay, now it can be ranging from very wicked actions, right? Very wicked actions to things that will harm you or disadvantage you. Now God says, this is how the world behaves. I think some of you can understand. You go to work, that is how the workplace is. Right? Recently someone used the word, it's a toxic environment. I thought, wow, okay. I've never used such a word at my workplace before. Toxic. Toxic means poisonous. You go there, it's like toxic fumes everywhere. You breathe in and you feel very sick and you maybe can die from it. All right, toxic. Very, very weak, very, very terrible environment. It's like everybody trying to poison everybody kind of environment. Toxic. Their words come out, poisonous, trying to kill someone. poison someone. All right, toxic environment. So is it the world? That is how the world behaves. But God says now, you don't do the same thing back to them. In other words, the Christian not only must be submissive, the Christian must never retaliate. Must never retaliate. God doesn't want you to retaliate. Now, we want to make it clear, right? We said before, there's a difference between retaliation and seeking fairness. All right? So make sure you understand. God says, don't do evil. God did not say, don't try to get people to acknowledge. No. So it's nothing wrong to actually seek justice, so to speak. All right? Seek redress. That is not wrong. But if you do it out of vengeance, right? If I do this, it's for the purpose of getting the other person in trouble. I'm going to say wicked things. Now you're railing. You're going to say wicked things about the person. God says, you cannot do that. I cannot do that. Now, it's the same in place in church as well. Please, although this applies now to bigger environment now. Now, why does God say, where's my question? Why does God command us to behave like that towards, well, I did something wrong. Question 8, why does God expect us to behave this way to believers? I covered believers first. Now, it's because of John 13:35. You just write John 13:35 and I read to you. I want us to behave like that because God says, by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples if you have love one to another. So God says, verse 8 kind of behavior is the strangers and pilgrims behavior that tells the world we are different. Now, will you submit to that? God, I don't really care to be different. Now, question number 9. All right, why must God remind us about verse 9? Why must God remind us of verse 9? Because that is how the world behaves, and that is how our flesh likes to behave. That is why God says, now in all the situations with the government, with the workplace, with your bosses, in the home, with your siblings, among spouses, the flesh desire is to retaliate. You speak like that, I will speak like that back to you. Or you will say, you started it first, right? Whenever there's quarrel between siblings or spouses, you started it first. Between friends, the same. Don't even start with me. You're the one who did all these things. Right? That is, God says, that is the flesh. The flesh behaves like that. Now, look at chapter 2. Chapter 2. Now, God is because of chapter 2, verse 10. Abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul. The soul wants to submit to God and be the Christian you need to be in the country, in the workplace, in the home. The soul wants that. But the flesh doesn't like to be submissive, doesn't like to feel that now you rail against me, you injure me, and I cannot retaliate, then that makes me very weak. The flesh doesn't like that. But God says abstain from fleshly lust. The lust of the flesh is to retaliate. God says, strangers and pilgrims, you do not do that. You are different. Now, whatever you are facing at work, remember this lesson. God says, submit to how I ask you to behave. Do not retaliate. Same in the home. All right, we see more after that. Same in the home. Now, then, every time, so answer to question number 9, the second part is this. Every time this thing comes up, what must I do? Flesh, you want me to behave contrary to what a stranger and pilgrim should be on earth? I'm not going to let you have victory over me. I'm not going to do that. I will control my temper. I will control my words. I will control my reaction. Always, and the third one is always remembering, the world is watching me. My neighbors are watching me. I really hope there's no Christian family here that your neighbors say, wow, that family, every time, Middle of the night, screaming and shouting at each other. Daytime, throwing pots and pans. All right? Outside in the garden, fighting. I hope none of us have like that. Always remind, every time you want to retaliate, God says, I'm a stranger and pilgrim. The world is watching me. God is watching me. I must control myself. I must not behave like them because I'm a stranger and pilgrim. They are the flesh on earth. Now, question number 10. Now, what are we to do instead of retaliating at home, in school, at church? What are we to do when our flesh wants to retaliate? What does God tell us to do? Verse 9. Not doing this, but contrary-wise, means on the opposite. Do the opposite. What? Blessing. Contrary-wise, blessing. In other words, do the opposite thing. Bless them. Bless them. This will really make you look different. Bless them. What is bless them? Now, bless them means to wish them good, not evil, right? Wish them good. Not just say, I wish you good morning and I wish you have a good day, but in your heart you're fuming and thinking how to get back at the person and your husband, your wife, or your sibling, all right? Bless them means in your heart genuinely. In fact, if you apply verse 8, remember, all these behaviors are to be applied in all situations. Finally, use this kind of behavior. You look at them and you actually must have compassion for them. You must sympathize with them. You must pity them. You must, of course, they're not brethren, so it's not about love as brethren. You must be courteous to them. And you have a genuine care for them still. You look at them as a soul. So bless them. Now, bless them means this. God is not simply saying, don't retaliate. God is not simply saying, just swallow your pride. Just swallow and don't say it and don't do it. God is not saying that. God is saying, yes, do that, but I am telling you that is not enough as strangers and pilgrims. You want to show the world whose child you are? You not only don't retaliate, you do them good. So this bless is not just you wish them to the point where when there is opportunities, you will do them good. Remember we studied, if there's any opportunities, do good to all men, first to the household of God. Do good, you will do good to them. Now you think of your boss that you really, really suffer under. You think of that friend of yours that keeps taking advantage of you, or that relative. You think of that boy in school, the girl in school that bullies you. You think of all that. And God says, not just don't retaliate. When they need help, do good to them, help them. Isn't this the greatest characteristic of Christ? You and I abuse him, reject him, will never want him. What did he do? Came, pleaded, died to save you and I. And he has nothing to gain from us. But he did that. Knowing that we need help. We needed help. Without him, there is no help. We will end up in hell. That is what he did. So God says now, you do that because now when they see your behavior, they will say, their God is different. It is true. You behave in retaliation, what makes you different from them when you preach the gospel to them? So God says now, please be gracious to them. Can you do that? Now, it is not easy. We'll see how afterwards. Now then it means this. At work, how do I bless someone? This person sabotages you. And as a result, he's promoted. All right, he's your boss now. And actually, by right, you should be in that position to make things worse. All right? But he sabotaged you now, he's in that position. And he continues to be unkind to you. Are you going to say, well, then I will sabotage the department. I won't do my best. Or when he is in trouble and say, I cannot do this, I don't know how to do this. Or we are in trouble, can you please do this or help me? What are you going to do? God says, not only don't retaliate, bless. Yes, I can help you. Don't worry, I will help you. That is what we are called to do at the workplace. God did not call us to go and be promoted. God did not call us to go and make a lot of money. God did not call us to make sure that our name cards have very big titles. God did not call us to all that thing. God simply called us to bless in the workplace. Then in the government, well, some of the things that they do, you may not agree, you may not like, but as long as they're not sinful, support, even help. Even help where you can, right? Same in the home. If your husband has not been if your husband don't love you as he ought to, what are you going to do? God still say bless. God still say submit. In fact, in chapter 3, verse 1, God says it's such a behavior that is going to convert him. Such a change, because he will see there is no woman that will behave like that. Only a Christian wife, and that change that I've seen now behaves like that. It's impossible. They will be touched. They will be convicted. All right? So don't think that retaliation is what will firm up your position. Think of their soul. So now, so at the workplace, that's why in the school, can you think of any? Well, some of you are in, actually I don't need to talk about school. Oh, the very young ones are here. In school, it's the same. They're a bully to you. Right? They're bullying you. Then they fall down. What are you going to say? What are you going to do? Pour salt into their wound, not for the good reason, right? You retaliate. You do things. Now you feel very good. God said the Christian must never feel very good in his heart. Bless instead, and this blessing has that compassion in your heart. What do you do, Matthew? What would you do? Faster run over to him, right? Faster run over to him and do what? Kick him. No, right? Not kick your enemy when they're down. Faster run toward him and help him up. Put him down and see what you can do to help, right? That is the Christian behavior. What if he continues to bully you, Matthew? The next time he fall down again, you help him up again. God says, never evil for evil. Never. If you start to think in your heart, you at your workplace at that point, now there is the perfect chance to get back at a colleague. Even if he's really wrong and your boss asks you, what's wrong? Can you say what's wrong? You can. But it's never because of retaliation, at salt, at whatever. You say what is honest. That is it. All right? And there are other good points, say the good points. Never for retaliation. Facts are different. All right? Now, then, next. Let me see. All right, home is the same, all right? Actually, at home, really, do not be husband and wives that keep railing against each other. Now, there is one very interesting trait, and all the husbands in Husbands Fellowship, they all agree. Spouses, mimic each other's behavior. Siblings also, typically, all right? What do I mean by that? Now, if when something goes wrong, and then you're someone who will blame, get angry, or even if the person is wrong and you're right, you love to jump on the opportunity to say things. When the situation reverses, you will find that your wife or your husband will act exactly the same way. That is the human behavior. Sinful behavior. I'm not saying it's right. But when you learn these behaviors, yes, you were not nice to me, but now there is a thing, I bless, I help. I'm very patient. I even help you. Instead of saying, I told you so. All right? I'm not saying that you condone sin. The next time when things happen, that is how your husband will react as well. You'll be soft-toned. All right? It's the same among friendships. It's the same, right? Among Christians. Among colleagues. Now, but God says, even if they don't respond, you still do not retaliate. All right? But there is, now look at question number 11. Now, why are we to respond rightly when treated wrongly in life? Why are we to respond that way? So maybe you're beginning to struggle already. Why are we to respond that way? Now, look at verse 11. No, sorry. Look at verse 9. God says, you do verse 8, you do verse 9. Why? Knowing. Be very aware of this in your heart. And let it establish in your heart, knowing thereunto you are called. You are thereunto called. You are called to do that. Do you realize? If you say, I do not know what is God's calling in my life, this is one of the known calling. The known calling is to behave like verse 8 and verse 9. That is your calling in life. That is your calling when you live in a country. That is your calling when you go to a workplace and God put you there. That's your calling if you marry someone. That's your calling if this is your brother or your sister at home or in church. That's your calling. That is what God appointed us to. It's a calling. We are called to such a life. Now why? Why? How should it motivate you? Why does God say, I call you to that? It always goes back to verse 11, chapter 2, verse 11. Dearly beloved, because this is the beginning of everything that he was going to say about submission. Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul. Verse 12. Now, make sure your conversation among the Gentiles, what are they? They will speak evil against you. They will do wicked things to you. But by your good works, that is your calling and my calling. We are called unto good works, so that you will be a testimony to them by being so different from them. When they try to rope you in to work against someone in the workplace, and you know if you don't, you might also be ostracized, you might also be attacked. But say, well, I cannot behave like that as strangers and pilgrim on earth. I must stay out of it. Even if I lose my job, it's fine. It's fine. Because I'm not called to be someone in the workplace. I am called not to retaliate. I am called not to be evil, not to do anything evil. I'm called to bless. So when you go to work every day in your heart, you go to school every day in your heart, it is not to get good results. It is to be such a person in school. Do we understand our calling on earth? When you have a job, it is not to make money, as much money as possible. It's to make a living, not to make money. And when you're there, now when you're called to this life means it's your gospel. How does it motivate you? Now you see it's a gospel opportunity. You keep saying, I want to be a witness. Now this is what it is, stranger and pilgrim. Because God says, you are called to that, and when they do evil to you, when they rail against you, God says, I've just created the opportunity. It is not my chance, my child. I am your father. I will always protect you. Why did I let that happen to you in school? Why did I let that happen to you at work? Because you are called to bless. If you bless when they do good to you, what difference does it make you from the world? How are you going to show them, your strangers and pilgrims, I'm different? When you bless. So can you understand that whenever there is something that seems adverse to you happening in school, at home, at work, it is now my calling coming into play. It is my opportunity to respond in a way that the world will never respond, and thereby glorify, and people will see God. People will see God. You keep telling them, come to church, be a Christian. God is very good. It's very wonderful. They won't believe you. When they say, how is it possible that you behave like that? That is with the difference. So can you and I really begin to change in our thinking as strangers and pilgrims? When you seek a job, when you're in a job, when things go wrong, how do you look at that situation? This person, I've been tolerating this person for very long already, This is my chance to get back. No, this is my chance to bless. When they fall, when they have problem, this is my chance to bless. No one else will do that, but you will do that. Understand your calling? You have a very difficult bullying sister or brother. How are you going to respond? This is my calling. I joyfully bless. They take my things. You say you want the toy, right? And then they take part of the toy, you give the other part of the toy, you bless. Hopefully praying that over that, your sister will change, your brother will change, your spouse will change. Bless instead. All right, so now I got to move quickly and then we close. Oh, yes. Question number 12. What does submission to God in how we respond in difficulties in life? What does submission to God in how we should respond in difficulties in life bring in our life? Right? So God says, now I want you to submit to this. Live like that. Don't retaliate. Bless instead. Now, God, what does it bring to our life? Submitting to this. Look at verse 11. Look at verse 10. For he that will love life and good days, then let him refrain his tongue from evil. See, don't do evil. His lips from speaking guile. You see, again, doing things that are not sincere to target people. Let him eschew evil, means run away from evil. Do good. You see, what verse 9 is saying is just explaining the Old Testament verse in Psalm 34, which is stated here in verse 11 and verse 12. Do good, bless. But what does God say this will do to your life when you submit to that? On the opposite of what you keep hearing, say, well, if I go to work, this is going to be very bad if I behave like that. No, God says, if you love life, if you love your life, and if you want to see good days, do this. Do this instead. Now, what more? It says, verse 9, that you should inherit a blessing. There are two things that will happen. A blessing and a peaceful life. All right? A good life. A good life. The world will not agree. Maybe in your heart you also don't agree. Maybe you say, Lord, I've been doing that at work, but things are not getting better. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. I have no time to ask questions. I really want to ask you that. How is it possible that if things are getting worse, although I'm behaving like that, I inherit a blessing and it is a good life? I see good days. How can it be? Now, recently, Sharon and I, we like to eat certain thing, a particular thing, so there was some offer, so we went to eat. The first time, there's like a special, so we sat down, then we ate. Right? We ate, and then we waited. My food came. No, my food didn't come. All right, she finished her meal already, and lots of people ordered after me, all left. All right, my food still didn't come. And then I told the person, well, my food still didn't come. I asked 2-3 times already. They said, come. It still didn't come. Then finally it came. They just apologized. They said, it's okay. I must remember, not render evil for evil. I must bear a good testimony. This is my chance to bear a good testimony. All right, I'm very hungry, and this thing is very unfair how they treated me. You want to feel small and little in there, all right? But I say, well, don't retaliate. It's my chance to show testimony. So just still smile and pay money, still smile. Yeah, how come so long? Still be patient. All right? Hopefully they say, well, most customers will scream and shout. And I say, okay, the second time, I say, still, good lunch offer. Let's go and eat when we have time. So the second time we went, guess what? Yes, you guessed right, the same thing happened again. The same thing happened again. I couldn't believe it. All right? Then the same waiter again. Then I asked 2-3 times. Again, Sharon finished. People have left the restaurant. I'm still waiting for my food. Then it's ordinary food. Then he came and said, I really do not know what happened. Of course, he used some not so nice language at the kitchen, that kind of thing. And then he went. He said, I'm very so sorry. I give you free soup. Right? So a very nice soup. So you see, receive a blessing, right? Receive a blessing. Well, I'm not talking about that blessing. Well, sometimes we think those are blessings. Yeah, it can be. It can be. All right? It can be. Now then the third time I went, and this time it was, I can't remember, it was one of our festival, I can't remember, one of the gospel meeting. So I invited the person to the gospel meeting. Then he says, oh, you're a Christian? I say, yeah, I'm a pastor, I work at the church nearby, why don't you come? I say, yeah, I do visit a church, my friend bring me there. I say, oh, okay. Then he said, oh, now I understand. I said, what do you understand? I said, are you a believer? He said, no. He said, but I find Christianity interesting. I find people quite interesting. But he's very frank. I want to go there. I meet more people. People come to my restaurant. He was quite honest. But he said, now I understand. I said, understand what? And he said this, now I understand why you did not lose your temper. You were still okay. So many times like that, but you were okay. Now I understand.
You say, because Christians are like that. I heard Christians are like that. It's a gospel opportunity. Now, I'm not praising myself, all right? I'll be honest, I really struggle, all right? But we must always, now I learned that my lesson myself. Never will I ever. Because sometimes yes, when I'm buying things, then they just are so wrong. Then I actually tell them, this is not right. A bit angry and that. Now I say, I will never do that again. Because that is how they view. That is your gospel opportunity. You're called to that situation. Thereunto you are called. Then he took out a card and gave me 2 extra stamps. Another blessing. But is that the blessing? Well, sometimes God will give you that because of how you behave at work. Your boss says, I really trust you. I think I should promote you. Maybe there is that blessing. But that is not the blessing we are looking for. What is the blessing? The blessing is that now someone, look at chapter 2, verse 11. Verse 12, chapter 2, verse 12. They may, by your good works which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. That was an opportunity. That was a day. That was my calling day. That they will glorify God. The important thing, the greatest blessing, was it nice? It was not nice. Did things improve? It did not improve. By my being very humble and don't retaliate and still continue to be very nice, and even when I'm paying, I will introduce more people to your restaurant and tell people about your offer now. Still continue to bless? Do you think it was nice? It was not nice. I think it happened 3 times actually. Did things improve? No. I could sit there and say, actually if I was maybe fiercer last time, every time I come in, that man again, treat him very nicely. You can feel like that. But you see, the blessing is this, that now they will see God. This is something interesting, that normal people do not behave like that. I could have behaved very differently. I just thank the mercy of God that I did not. All right? That is the blessing, that you were used by God. That someone else, that they have seen Christians are bad. Now they say, no, actually people tell me Christians are like, there are Christians like that. That is the blessing. The blessing is that God used you. When you don't retaliate at work, when you are a submissive wife to your husband, and your husband get converted. But for many years, life was very difficult. But they get converted. Is that a blessing? That is the blessing. It's always a spiritual blessing. All right, so now finally, last one, and then we close. Now, is this a peaceful life? Yes. Sorry, question number 12. Is it a peaceful life? Yes. Seek peace and pursue it. Don't quarrel with... Now, I want to say this. Christians, every time I teach topics like that, there's bound to be someone that will ask. Now, I'm not saying don't ask questions, right? But they'll be bound to someone say, but what if I was mistreated? What if I was shortchanged? What if this is not right? But Christians must do something right. If not, some other person will suffer. Yes, it's true. If there's genuinely all those, yes, if you need to do it, but don't do it out of retaliation and all. But there's always people that will think, no. We must always calculate. We must always complain. No, they don't say complain. Okay, now I understand. I don't complain, but I must bring it up. I must bring it up. There's always that attitude in some of us. Look at verse 11. Let him seek peace and ensue it. Let him be humble. Let him seek peace. Now let me ask you, Christian, how many injustices can you right in your life? Let me ask you that. If you want to be a Christian, yes, I won't argue with you that there is a Christian right to seek justice, but let me ask you, how many? We will always be treated with injustice. These people are treated far worse. Remember, we are reading 1 Peter. They were persecuted for unreasonable things. They were maligned, totally accused of things they never committed at all. What did he say? Seek peace. Seek peace. He didn't say seek justice. Seek peace and sue it. How many things can you get right to get justice? You want to be such a person? Now you understand why God says you will have a good life. People who are like that have miserable lives. They're always fighting with someone. They're always trying to claim something. They're always fighting someone. They're always doing this. But God says, yes, now you understand why you have a miserable life. Seek peace and ensue it. Don't be such a picky person. Instead, so what if I suffer some loss? But with that loss, I behave in a way that make it very different from everyone else. Right? Yes, sometimes we do need to make sure that other people are protected. But if it's so often, really, I'm getting a bit passionate about this because there are some Christians who are like that. But pastor, right, I must seek justice, right? If not someone else. Every case is if not someone else get bullied. But really, is it true? If it's a genuine case, yes, I understand. But you have a very, very disturbed life, very disturbed mind. There is no peace. Submission actually brings peace. Understand that. You know the anti-vaxxers' life? How miserable they are, at least in my perspective. It's a miserable life. Now, I'm not saying that if you cannot take that medication that is rejected because you have a medical condition, I'm not talking about those people, all right? It's a life of constant fighting. Everything is a fight. So God says, seek peace. Don't make your home don't make it a fight. Everything is a fight. Why do you put the things like that? Can't you put it this way? Everything is a fight. God says, seek peace between siblings, between spouses, in the church. Right? Always picking on something. Now, finally, last one. Question 13. What should I do when it is very challenging to respond in a godly way? What can I do? God says, verse 12. What can you do? Pray. Verse 12, for the eyes of the Lord are over the righteous, and his ears are open unto their prayers, but the face of the Lord is against them that do evil. Pray. Remember, the husband, if you do not, yes, your wife is insubmissive. God says, help her, be patient, sanctify her. But if you just treat her badly and just ignore, God says, I will reject your prayers. But if you say, I am doing the right thing, same for the wife. My husband is very unreasonable. Same in church, but this other Christian brother is very unreasonable, have been unreasonable, has been taking advantage of me. If you are righteous, God said, you just keep, your calling is not to get justice for yourself. My eyes are looking over the righteous. Yes, it may not turn out still when you are so kind and continue to bless, but don't worry, there is a blessing. If not in this life, all right, don't keep thinking, I get extra soup, I get extra stem. If not in this life, in heaven, there is a blessing. Don't keep feeling, I've done everything already, it's still like that. God said, you're called to that. When you have a life like that, it's your gospel opportunity to show them. Every time you face it, it's an opportunity at work. Then you pray. God says, my ears are open to your prayers. I know. I will help. I may not get you out of the situation because that is your calling. God did not get them out of the situation. They still died as martyrs there. You can't say, well, God's eyes open to the righteous, open his ears to their prayers, but how come they died still burned by Nero as used as torchlights? How come it happened to them? What God is saying is this: your reward is in heaven when you fulfill your calling. Your calling is not always to get justice, it's not to retaliate and avenge yourself. Your calling is to bless when you are maligned. That is your calling. And when you fulfill that, you say, I'm hearing your prayers, don't worry. You won't die if I don't want you to die. You won't get fired if I don't want you to get fired. But you will go through that situation. But all the while when you're going through that situation, you will have the peace of God that the world do not understand. You will have that. You will have that joy, in fact, to know that I am behaving exactly how God has called me to be, how God has called me to behave on earth. In front of that Christian, that boss, that wife, the husband, I am behaving exactly like that. I can sleep at night with peace. I have joy that God understands, God knows. I'm doing it to Him, that's all. I am not here to get the other person down and I get back what I want. I'm not here to do that. I'm just here to bless. That is all. You see, when you and I think like that, our whole perspective of life changes. The peace that we have in our heart the good days. Good means you really know that I am living a Christian life as God expected. Those are good days. The days that I retaliated and I got what I wanted and it made the person feel bad by my words, that is a bad day. That is what we must understand. Now I hope that this changes our thinking about strangers and pilgrims on earth about submission. Let us pray.
What do we have here? Top 5 reasons why church dropouts, what church dropouts say, why they stop attending church. Now please remember 66% of, well, I take the American view, they're the most readily available results. They stop attending church at least a year after turning 18. So from